Hello and welcome back to Lady Finds Lust, the podcast. This is Jerry Lee Watson here. I'm a writer, I'm a weirdo and an explorer of love, life and relationships. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram under Lady Finds Lust. So welcome and thank you for joining me again, or maybe this is your first time viewing. If you're here, please give me a thumbs up just to let me know. And if you enjoy today's recording, please subscribe to my channel because I will be uploading recordings around once a fortnight, which if you're not in Australia, you might not know that a fortnight is a 2-week period. Okay, so as you can see by the title of today's video, we are going to be talking about ugly duckling syndrome. And the reason I want to talk about ugly duckling syndrome is because it is something I have experienced in my personal life, as well as it is a very lesser known phenomenon, meaning it's not something that we hear or talk much about. And even if you go to Google or research the topic, there are not a lot of resources available on ugly duckling syndrome. Okay, so to preface today's discussion, I am going to read to you the story of the ugly duckling. Okay, so this is a classic fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen, and this was written in the 1800s, and it has been adapted probably thousands of times to all different children's books and stories and nursery rhymes. So it's a very, very, very popular story with a fantastic metaphor behind it. Okay, so I'm just going to get straight into the story. And it goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a duck. She lived in the forest. One day, she laid some eggs. After warming them carefully, the duck waited for the eggs to hatch. As she watched, 3 of her eggs cracked, and 3 lovely ducklings came into the world. The mother duck was overjoyed, but the largest egg was still there. At last, the great egg burst, but it was large, grey, and ugly. The mother duck looked at it. Oh no, he can't be my baby. How ugly and different he is from all my other children, Mother Duck said. The ugly duckling was hated by his brothers and sisters. They would often mock at him. The ugly duckling felt so sad that he ran away from home one day. Walking alone, the ugly duckling came upon a house. As he peeped inside, he saw an old woman sitting idle. At her foot sat a cat and a hen. Suddenly, the woman noticed the duckling. At first, the woman cuddled the duckling, but the very next moment, she screamed at him in anger. "Away from here, you ugly duckling," she said. The duckling ran out of the house. Once again, the poor duckling went walking sadly. He spent the rest of his day and night crying all alone. He felt lonely and miserable, but the ugly duckling was hopeful in his heart. Then one day, the duckling saw a pond. His eyes lit up in joy as he had seen the water after so many days. The ugly duckling hopped of joy. He swam to his satisfaction, but his happiness was short-lived. Winters had started and the cold wind had started to blow. Due to the cold weather, the pond had frozen. Now the ugly duckling couldn't swim. A little while later, a kind farmer happened to pass that way. Taking pity on the duckling's miserable condition, he took him home. The farmer nursed the duckling and soon the bird was well. The farmer left the duckling in the pond. One morning, the duckling saw the beautiful swans around him. The duckling was ashamed of himself and bent his head low. He saw beneath the water his own reflection. It was the reflection of a swan. He was no longer a grey, ugly bird. The duckling was amazed. Actually, he had grown into a beautiful swan. Those beautiful swans he saw were his brothers and sisters. The ugly duckling remembered how everyone used to ignore him. The ugly duckling now heard the swans say that he was the most beautiful among them. Now he was no more the ugly duckling. So I almost get emotional reading that story because it is just such a beautiful story. And I guess if you were ever bullied as a child, or if you've felt like you didn't fit in, or you're a black sheep, or even if you suffered from body dysmorphic disorder or type symptoms, then you will probably really resonate with that story. Okay? So, how does this story relate to ugly duckling syndrome? And what is ugly duckling syndrome? So I've got up here the Urban Dictionary definition of ugly duckling syndrome. Okay, and the top one says, ugly duckling syndrome. Beautiful people who didn't get pretty until high school or later and were nice because they were ugly. The niceness carries over through life. And I just want to quickly say that that is a really interesting point because often if you are unfortunate in the looks department, then you overcompensate in other ways, perhaps by being smart or funny or good at something else like a sport or a hobby. Okay, and then there's an example here of ugly duckling used in a sentence, and just excuse me because this is Urban Dictionary, so it's not great, but it says Stephanie was an ugly fuck, but she was nice, but now she's hot and she doesn't even know it. Okay, and then finally I have an article here, and this article is on bold.com, and it is called Do You Have Ugly Duckling Syndrome? 11 signs you're not used to being hot. Okay, so the number one sign is you can't accept a compliment. And then it goes on to say that they cannot accept compliments because they genuinely do not believe them, because they spent so much of their life being ugly and outcast and bullied. Okay, just like the ugly duckling in that story. Okay, and number two, so this one is towards females, but it says you automatically assume a guy's interested in friendship rather than a romantic relationship. And then it goes on to say that people with ugly duckling syndrome aren't used to people being romantically attracted to them, so therefore they automatically assume that people are not. Okay, and number three. Okay, number three is boring, so I'm going to skip. Here we go. You tend to value intelligence or sense of humor in others versus looks, okay? And this goes on to elaborate more on what I touched on before. Genuinely, people who are very unfortunate in the looks department have to develop other skills and ways of making people like them, okay? And this often results in a really developed sense of humor or intelligence. Okay, and last sign is, there's plenty here, but I'm just going to choose one more. Okay. I like this one. You're able to see beauty in almost anything. You find even ugly people to be attractive in their own way. You tend to believe that everyone is beautiful and that there's something inherently special about everyone, no matter what they look like. Okay, and that is a very cute point. Probably not true though, because some people are hideous inside and out. Let's just be honest. But that's nice, okay? So I feel like ugly duckling syndrome is very relevant to points that I have discussed in my previous episodes, points surrounding self-love, self-hatred and self-acceptance, okay? And I think I see this in a lot of my peers and a lot of people that I know. I feel like everybody suffers from it to different extents. For example, I have a lot of friends and family and people who I know who are completely unaware of how attractive or funny or awesome they are, because they spent their whole lives being criticized or doubting themselves. And really, that's just no way to live. So all of this ties into another phenomenon, and this one you may have heard of. It's called imposter syndrome. Okay, so imposter syndrome is similar. It is much more common, and I'm going to go over imposter syndrome in my next video, because it's very relevant to what I'm trying to teach people. So I'm not going to get into that today, but hang out for that. I'm actually going to wind things up for today. I'm going to try keep it short and sweet and to the point, and I think we've done that today. So please like, subscribe, leave a comment, whatever you want. It all helps me tremendously. And I thank you for tuning in and listening. Let me know what you thought of the story. Let me know your experiences with ugly duckling syndrome or imposter syndrome, and let's get the conversation going. Okay? Alright, thank you guys. And remember, stay woke. Bye.